Good afternoon. Let's do some business, shall we? We are doing it live right here, weekday afternoons at 4 o'clock. We get right down to business with the news-driven hour after Ben Shapiro and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air here, 790 KBC, streaming live for you online at kbc.com. And yes, the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, all your favorite podcast platforms. The stock market kicking off the week higher today as investors continue to take in the latest earnings reports from the tech giants, and we await the big Fed decision this week. Fed policymakers will be meeting, culminating with a big decision and a statement on the economy and interest rates that'll be coming out later this week. And the Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will have a full-blown news conference after all that. We saw the Dow move higher today, up 146 points at the close. The S&P 500 moved up 16, and the NASDAQ gained 55 points. Double nickels on the board today for the NASDAQ. We did see Treasury yields finish lower for a second straight day amid continued buying of government debt ahead of the Fed's policy update coming up in a couple of days. The surging dollar once again in the spotlight, sending shivers basically through the global financial markets and also impacting the multinational companies. A stronger dollar makes it tougher for a lot of the big companies here to rake in the dough. Kathy Wood's flagship exchange-traded fund focus on innovation was moving higher today, lifted by Tesla, which was among the big winners today, moving up, about 15%. The ARK Innovation ETF was up about 2.5% today. In the business of show business, media and entertainment giant Paramount Global, the parent company of Paramount Studios, CBS, and the list goes on, has announced that Chief Executive Bob Bakish was stepping down and would be replaced by a 3-person office intended to help materially streamline operations. The announcement follows reports of Bakish's potential ouster that came up last Friday and his opposition to a possible merger between Paramount and Skydance Media. Of course, the Middle East remains in focus, with tensions there rising. Oil prices moving lower today, though, due to a ceasefire discussion between Israel and Hamas going on in Egypt, which eased concerns for the moment about a broader conflict in the Middle East, and oil prices did pull back today. Meanwhile, closer to home, protests at universities showing no signs of slowing, with more arrests on campuses across the country, skirmishes between pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian demonstrators at UCLA and Westwood, where a tent encampment was set up last week. UCLA now stepping up security there. I'll discuss what's happening with prominent Los Angeles Rabbi David Barron, founding rabbi of the Beverly Hills Temple of the Arts, coming up live later this hour. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, the Fed meeting this week, and the whole works. Joining us live now, investment expert Brian Perry, chief investment strategist and portfolio manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com, also author of the 25% Cash Machine. Brian, great to have you with us to kick off the week. Take it from the top, and we're in for a big week here with a Fed decision coming up this week and earnings news galore. Give us your view of things here at the moment.
Okay, thanks, Frank. Yeah, we're looking for another week of very wide price swings for stocks as well as volatility. It's going to be accentuated certainly by the Fed meeting here, some big earnings out. The Treasury today, got things going here with, by announcing what their borrowings would be here going forward here. They were higher than expected. For the first quarter, they were going to be just around even, but going forward here for the second and third quarter, they're expecting to borrow tens of billions of dollars more than they forecasted back in January, around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That started to make the rounds, and you saw the Treasury market, get a little bit queasy there, and then the market dropped, and then came back after the bond market held. So that basically is par for the course here with this whole bond market and how, the appetite for U.S. Treasuries and debt around the world here. A couple of big movers here. Apple traded higher today on an upgrade by an analyst who really doesn't have, he kind of has a subpar track record. So fundamentally and technically, Apple's still in trouble in my view. So I'd just be careful with people that say, they can do a lot of things with their balance sheet. And, maybe not a massive stock buyback, but from the standpoint of what's happening in China, their second largest market here, there's certainly there's pressure. Tesla, like you said, gained very nicely after Elon Musk won China's backing for what is his driver-assisted technology, and they also inked a deal with Baidu, which is one of the larger e-commerce companies over there in China as well. Conversely, the big names from Microsoft, Meta, and Google, Alphabet, they pulled back following reports of a forthcoming oversight committee measures by Congress to regulate AI. And this is important to keep an eye on here, because this is right now it's been kind of the Wild West, and now you've got a lot of people chiming in. Certainly after the 60 Minutes program last night with chairman of AI of NVIDIA, also talking about the pros and cons of the future of AI. So it was interesting how this is going to develop here. Like you said, the Paramount CEO, he's out. They got 3 execs coming in. Or this is going to be one of the great take-unders of all time. The stock was trading at over $100 here back in 2021, and today it trades at 12. So not a lot to really get excited about, Frank, on that one there. During the day, some earnings here. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yep, go. We got the earnings parade continues, right? Yeah, what caught your attention today on that?
Well, yeah, today we saw Domino's Pizza. People still, despite all the weight loss hoopla, but Domino's traded new all-time highs, and great numbers there. NXPI came after the close. It's a semiconductor company that focuses on automobile chips. And we've seen Ford and GM trade to new highs, new 52-week highs for the year. And certainly with the EV market, which requires tons more chips than regular combustion engines, automobiles, that NXPI is making a move higher here, and that's almost a pure play on that type of chips. Coming tomorrow, we've got Amazon, which is a big story there, and certainly a super microcomputer, which for a lot of people that would be the second most volatile name in the market here, next to NVIDIA, okay? But they are a pure play on this whole AI, because you have to have servers to put NVIDIA chips in, and they are the leader in the liquid-cooled edge server market there. So SMCI is looking, traded really well today, up $34 here in front of the number, so I'm thinking that the whisper number's probably out. And Bitcoin here. Bitcoin looks like it's ready to start rumbling again here. You've got Hong Kong is looking to launch their first Bitcoin spot ETFs with Ethereum. And Japan's pension fund, one of the biggest in the world, is looking at Bitcoin here as an alternative investment. So the Asian market is warming up to Bitcoin here and some of the other cryptos, Frank. So that's an exciting development happening there for those that are long Bitcoin.
Yeah, we see a Bitcoin up about 1,000 right now, back to 64,023 here at last check. And wow, you mentioned Domino's Pizza. They were able to raise the dough in a big way here, and I haven't been following the stock lately, but it's above 500, 527 and change here, up $28 today. So that is impressive. People love pizza. That's the bottom line there.
Yeah, we talked about this. There's a couple of these players that just get it right, and Domino's is one of them. The other one is Chipotle, CMG. Again, people that have wanted to know where to buy that stock there, it's made a move from the just below 3,000 to 3,200 here in the last week here on powerful earnings here. Plus, you've got a 51 for stock split, 50 for 1 stock split coming up in June. I think the stock will back and fill maybe to 3,100 or so, but again, fundamentals look great, and it just looks like again you have this. Those are the 2 best managed food plays out there for what we call quick service restaurants, QSRs. Right.
All right, Tesla all of a sudden back above 190 here, up about 26 to 194 and change. That big pop today as Elon Musk paid a surprise visit to Beijing as Tesla's China-made cars passed the Chinese approval there. Tesla stock surging on full self-driving approval in China, so that is big news for Elon Musk. Whether he gets to the top again of the world's wealthiest list, that remains to be seen with today's pop. But what about Tesla here and the other EV names which have been under tremendous pressure lately?
Well, you have a lot of things going on with Tesla here that don't really get a lot of attention. This, first of all, the stock cleared its 20-day and its 50-day moving averages here. Huge technical breakout. The shorts just really got banged up today, and there's a big short position in the stock. And with that being said, the rumblings of that, will they come out with a quote Joe Sixpack EV, for an affordable EV with that wonderful Tesla engineering behind it. And that's something that's always out there. And I think that, Musk is full of surprises. It just is incredible how this guy, makes things happen when no one's looking. And I think that is forthcoming. Beyond that, though, he controls, the future, I think, of the charging business here, the charging station business, which is still in its, nascent stage here, where you can go in, get a cup of coffee, come out, and your car is charged. Right now, it's a long waiting time, and there's a line to get into the supercharging station. So that still needs a lot of work. Plus, again, he's going to lead the way in autonomous driving, and this assisted driving technology that he's been approved for in China is going to set the template for that. And so everyone will be watching how this goes in China, but then look for early adoption of that type of technology over here, Frank, if it goes well there. And so there's again, he's a mile ahead of the competition, and has been for a decade. So. Down here, the stock may back and fill again. It's currently closed today at 194, and there's still probably a short squeeze on it tomorrow. But you have a chance here to 50 days right around 175. That's probably a good place for people to, to mark that number and see if the stock pulls back there, because long term, he's still, I think, the king of the EV business.
A lot of Joe Sixpacks are driving that Cybertruck. I saw quite a few in Beverly Hills over the weekend. Some even had a styrofoam coffee cup on the dashboard and everything, Joe Sixpack style. So it was quite a sight this weekend. Quite a few of those trucks are all over the place here. At this point, Brian Perry, let me ask you the big question that we ask here, and I know you give a lot of thought to this always. Where are you putting money now and/or taking it off the table?
Okay, well, we've got roughly 50 to 60% of the S&P 500 has reported their first quarter numbers. And this is where investors, should use a tried and true practice that professional fund managers utilize, Frank, and that's called a cut and build strategy. This gives you a chance here to basically cut your losers that gave, fair to lower guidance, that they may have made their numbers, they may have not made their numbers, but and then you want to be able to look at the stocks that have beat their numbers and also raise guidance here and give very, very strong profit margin, forward guidance as well. So this is where you want to be able to, tailor your portfolios here for the rest of the year. And this gives you a chance to do that here during the month of May, because typically after earnings season here, the market will, fade and do some back and fill and consolidate. And then, between May and June, you get a chance here to actually put this all together. So those stocks that have come out here and really posted some great numbers here that are trading, you can buy right in here. There's a couple names right now. Is Fidelity Information Systems here. They provide a lot of data services for the bank and financial systems there. FIS is the symbol for that. Fox, India, Sierra. And then FedEx gave great numbers here. The great cost-cutting efforts by that company here, and certainly the better run of the two majors over UPS. So FDX has gapped higher, has back and filled. It looks really good here. I've been buying that here this week. Certainly MCOR, the infrastructure engineering company here. They had great numbers here this week. The stock gap higher, so look for that to come in. EME is the symbol there. We talked about Chipotle, CMG. Boston Scientific is your that's the best of breed here in the medical device area here. They had a very strong quarter here with their heart device, cardio device division is doing extremely well here. Texas Instruments. Chips of all things, Internet of Things. They're a big leader in that area here. TXN, gapped higher, give it a chance here to breathe, comes in. Goldman Sachs, another, they're the most loved and hated name on Wall Street, period. But the stock has, the deal flow here this year is real good. There's some IPOs coming out that are good. A lot of debt equity is going to be happening here, so they're in front of that. AstraZeneca, AZN, a new name for a lot of people out there. They're a UK pharmaceutical firm. They have a breakthrough breast cancer technology therapy that's coming through. It's in phase 3 trials right now. The stock broke out. That's an enormous market, enormous market here for them to address. And again, I was buying some IBIT here, which is the iShares Bitcoin ETF today, the spot ETF, IBIT. I think that Bitcoin looks like it's done consolidating here, put a nice double bottom higher low formation here in the chart. Looks like it wants to trade higher. Coming off, Philips NG. They won a lawsuit today, going way back for their respiratory device here, which they looked like they were going to have to pay $2 to $4 billion, and they ended up getting a settlement for $1 billion. That stock hasn't traded higher in 10 years. So PHD, I think, as you take it off here, certainly. With what I've been talking about lately here. And today, SoFi. Unfortunately, SoFi, our favorite, stadium over there in L.A., they gave poor guidance here for the second quarter here. They confirmed the year, but the stock kind of broke down here. So I think the stock's trading right around 7. That's a huge time support level. So people should be very careful that the stock doesn't break 7 here. And then Meta is going to have to spend a lot more money than they first thought of to make their AI systems go. And the stock has cracked here, and so I'd stay away from Meta for the time being here. And in your neck of the woods here, there's a wonderful athletic maker called Verana, which is starting to really take the rug out from Lululemon here. So Lulu broke down, and it looks like it's going to trade lower here going forward. So that's something here I would just basically. It's been a great name for a long time, but there's some chinks in their armor here, and Verana has just taken over as the new go-to name in that space.
Very interesting. The strength of the dollar getting a lot of attention. Gold has pulled back from its recent all-time high, but still up there, close to 2,346. What are your thoughts on the dollar here? The dollar strength that we're seeing here ahead of the big Fed announcement, and gold still hovering near its all-time high.
Well, the dollar's higher because interest rates look like they're going to stay higher. I wrote a piece over the weekend watching the price of copper here. It's trading, way up now. It's trading near $10,000 a ton, or $4.60 a pound. I mean, it's just incredible how strong copper is right now. The CRB index, Frank, is trading back up, to 346 here. They hadn't seen that level here since 2011. After coming up from 125, it's almost tripled here. So you've got commodities, both hard and soft, which are really cranking up around the world here. And you're also seeing the shelter index here. There's not giving much back here to which is called owner's equivalent rent. So it's as part of the CPI index. I don't think the Fed's going to raise. Cut interest rates. Maybe for the balance of the entire year. I just, maybe September possibly if things start to show differently. But right now, it looks like gold is still, you buy these dips in here, and then the dollar's going to probably remain firm despite the fact that you've got, this raging deficit spending going on here and this higher issuance of Treasury debt. So on that note, I would tell people to start looking at the Invesco currency shares for the Swiss franc. At some point, you're going to want to own, some alternative currency to the dollar here. And right now the dollar's strong, but you can buy Swiss francs at a deep discount now. The symbol for that is FXF, Foxtrot, X-Ray, Foxtrot. And that's proven to be a really good trade when the dollar turns over here. It's a good counterintuitive trade. So gold and FXF, if the treasury market starts to really stumble here, will be, I think, a good trade to have going forward.
All right. What about the chance of a rate hike? I don't know if that was a Freudian slip there a moment ago, but is that a possibility this year?
Unfortunately it is, because I'm not seeing any backing away from we could get into supply chain issues again here. You've got this thing with copper right now, and it's a lot of they're what they call these, the components that go into making copper, the smelters that China's the biggest producer of it in the world, they're having problems getting some of these concentrates because of all kinds of, weather and labor issues and other things that where they, where they're supplying the copper market here. So this is an interesting issue because copper is considered to be kind of a barometer of global economic conditions here. So when copper is pushing higher, it kind of drags everything along with it here in the hard space, but also in the food space. You got cocoa prices up over 100% since the beginning of the year. So food prices, again, are starting to march higher here. So with that in mind, it's really hard to imagine the Fed, thinking about cutting rates. But at the same time, if inflation does emerge again here with oil prices back up here in the mid 80s, right. hard to put that off the table, Frank.
Right. So they say copper is the only metal with a degree in economics. They call it Dr. Copper because it is an economic bellwether. So that's a very important point. And thanks for doing the terrific job, as always, with your thorough analysis here, Brian. Thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon. Investment expert Brian Perry, Chief Investment Strategist and Portfolio Manager at Mint Asset Management at mintassetmanagement.com, author of the 25% Cash Machine. Brian, wish you a great rest of the week, and thanks again for taking the call.
Do the same, Frank. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. And right out to the freeways now, 790 KBC. Friends, people like you and me have our ear to the ground on all things business. We like to be informed and indeed well prepared. As important as finance is, I want you to have a plan in case you're hit by someone not paying attention to the road. Thinking ahead serves us well, and even still we can get caught off guard as people are so focused on their destination that they might not have a plan if they're in an accident that's not their fault. That's why I encourage you to put my friend attorney Clark Fielding's number in your phone. That number is 833-88-SHARK. So if you're in an accident, you'll be ready with your strategy to make Clark Fielding your very first call. Fielding Law aims for the highest possible settlement, considering you might need long-term care, rehab, compensation for lost wages, and any ongoing physical or emotional pain. So if you're injured in any kind of accident, call for a free consultation with Fielding Law. You can trust them. They're honest, respected, and your strategy in case you get into that unexpected accident. Motorcycle, truck, pedestrian, scooter, hit and run, boating, or bike accidents, you name it. The number to call, 833-88-SHARK. That's 833-88-SHARK. Or go to ClarkTheSharkLaw.com. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KBC. Good afternoon. The Dow higher to kick off the new week, up 146 points at 38,386. The S&P 500 up 16 at 5,116. And the NASDAQ gained 55 at 15,983. Tesla shares bouncing today higher, up 15%. Gold pulling back a bit, down $12 at $2,346 an ounce. Oil down 3 cents at $82.60. Bitcoin on the rise right now, up about 1,000 to 64,022. We see Ethereum up $52 at $3,228, and Doge at the moment at 14 cents. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.62%. That did ease a bit today. That's the one that impacts the fixed-rate mortgage rates, which have been hovering at or near highs of the year. Well, here's some big news. One of the winners of a $1.3 billion Powerball jackpot this month is an immigrant from Laos who has had cancer for the past 8 years. In his latest chemotherapy treatment just last week, 46-year-old Cheng Charlie Safon of Portland, Oregon, telling a news conference held by the Oregon Lottery today that he and his 37-year-old wife would split the prize evenly with a friend who had chipped in $100 to buy a batch of tickets with them, and they're going to be taking a lump sum payment. Now the latest news here, 790 KBC. Continues here, 790 KBC. Businesses and consumers are enduring eye-popping increases in regulatory costs under the Biden administration. President Biden's been the regulator-in-chief since he took office, but lately he's been taking it to a whole new level. So says Adam Millsap, economic scholar at George Mason University's Mercatus Center, also Forbes magazine contributor, has written an op-ed article on this subject. Adam, thank you very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
Thanks so much for having me.
Terrific. Well, tell us about the regulator in chief who's been racking up the regulatory cost, as you note in your latest article here.
Yeah, absolutely. So every presidential administration uses regulation and the administrative state to push through part of their agenda. But Biden has been taking it to a whole new level, as you just mentioned. His cost, when you look at this, $1.4 trillion so far. Into his administration. And just for some comparisons, Barack Obama only implemented about $300 billion of regulatory costs, and Trump, who cut a lot of regulation during his presidential term, only implemented $30 billion up to this point. So 4 times as much as Obama and 40 times as much as what Trump had done up to this point. And just one more frame of reference here. If this was GDP, if you think about this in terms of GDP, this would be equivalent. Biden's regulatory costs would be equivalent to all the state output in Washington and Arizona combined.
All right, and what is the outlook here? Looks like more regulations on the table, right?
Yeah, Biden's been very aggressive, and it's very unlikely that he's going to stop. It's hard to get anything through Congress, and so he's using the unelected bureaucrats in the administrative state to push through his agenda. And what's interesting about this is that the Democrats spend a lot of time talking about democracy and how we need to protect democracy, but most of what Biden is doing is very undemocratic. These people aren't elected. They don't hold office. A lot of them are career bureaucrats who have worked in D.C. for 10, 20, 30 years, and they're the ones pushing through this agenda rather than Congress voting and deciding if this is something that the American people actually want.
All right, so I know you've done a thorough job here with the getting the calculator out. So tell us again, how much of an increase have we seen in the last 3 or so years now?
Like I said, so it's been about $1.4 trillion worth of regulatory costs 267 million paperwork hours that he's added. So this is just more burdens on small businesses, on existing firms, and the people that create the jobs that Americans need. And it also increases prices for consumers at a time when inflation is still high. And Biden is, talking about maybe rolling back the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which passed a lot of middle-class tax cuts. So he's really hitting his whole agenda, from the regulation to the bad spending policies that led to inflation, is really hitting American consumers hard right now.
All right. And what about states? Are they following along with this, or are some actually cutting the red tape?
Yeah, so some states are actually cutting red tape. So this is one way that the burden can be lessened a little bit, is if states decrease some of their own regulations at a time when the federal government is really ramping up theirs. So Ohio, a couple years ago, passed its budget Red Tape Reduction Act, which is supposed to cut its regulation by 30%. Idaho has cut some regulation, and there's a few other states that have addressed regulation like zoning policies or certificate of need laws that require hospitals and other kind of medical service providers to get government permission slips before they can open up new facilities. So a lot of states have gotten rid of those. So there's opportunities for states to step in and say, hey, even if the federal regulation is creating a headwind for economic growth, we can reduce some of our own regulations or streamline some of our own regulations in order to create jobs, create more businesses, and get the economy moving.
Be nice to see more red carpet instead of red tape for businesses here, certainly. And what are some of the areas you mentioned? Some of the states that are cutting red tape. I guess some states, I recall hearing, have eliminated requirements for some licenses. Right, occupational licensing that was getting attention for a while.
Yep, absolutely. So Arizona, your neighbor there, has done a really great job making it easier for people from moving in from out of state to have their licenses recognized, so they don't have to go through the whole process and pay all the costs of getting a brand new license. Other states have followed suit. South Carolina has done a good job making it easier for people who have criminal records to get occupational licenses. A lot of times there's these good character requirements, which are somewhat nebulous and hard to define, but they can prevent people who have, criminal records related to completely unrelated things from getting a license. Florida has even gotten rid of a few licenses, which is really great. So they have eliminated licenses for hair braiders and boxing announcers and timekeepers, and they've also reduced a lot of requirements for things like barbers and cosmetologists to make it easier for people to get the training that they need in order to pursue those jobs and join the middle class, or the upper middle class for that matter. It'd be great to see California as one of the most heavily regulated states. So it would be great to see if they could reduce some of their own regulation. But I guess that remains to be seen. We'll see what Gavin Newsom has planned.
Yeah, I haven't heard of anything on the horizon as far as that's concerned. So all of this means higher prices for consumers ultimately, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So regulation is like a hidden tax. People don't notice it as much as they would if, Biden came in and said he was raising taxes by $1.4 trillion. People would notice that. There'd be a lot of outcry. CNN, MSNBC, all the big media would be covering it. But when things like regulation, people don't really pay as much attention. It's harder to notice, but it really has some of the similar economic effects. And in many places, you're seeing that with energy prices. Biden's done a lot on making it harder to produce gas and oil in this country. He's implemented renewable fuel standards. He's done this latest thing with the emissions with the cars, restricting the amount of emissions that can come out. And some of this can be good. I mean, no one wants to live in a place that's really polluted, but we've done a lot of that stuff already. We're just trying to squeeze more and more juice out of a rock, essentially. And so what it really ends up doing is we don't get much benefit for it, but we really get a lot of costs added to people's day-to-day purchases.
Adam, thank you very much for sharing the highlights of your excellent op-ed article in Forbes. That's headlined, Biden's regulatory onslaught will hurt the states that do not adapt. Adam Millsap, Forbes magazine contributor, also economic scholar at George Mason University's Mercatus Center. Adam, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too. Now, let's get right out to the freeways here, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Secretary of State Blinken hoping Hamas will accept what he called Israel's extraordinarily generous offer for a Gaza truce and hostage release deal following the Hamas terror attack on Israel last October 7th. The Jewish holiday Passover arrived at a tense time in the Middle East and at many college campuses here in the U.S. Protesters showing no signs of slowing. with more arrests on campuses across the country and skirmishes between pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian demonstrators at UCLA. Universities across the country now cracking down on anti-Israel protesters who've taken over some campuses. Columbia University today had started suspending students who participated in anti-Israel protests and defied an order to clear encampments. We're following all these developments closely. UCLA now stepping up security around a pro-Palestinian protest encampment. Joining us live now, prominent Los Angeles Rabbi David Barron, founding rabbi of the Beverly Hills Temple of the Arts. Rabbi Barron, thank you very much for coming to the line here this afternoon.
Great to be with you, Frank.
Rabbi, give us your thoughts about what's happening.
Well, you know, it's extremely disconcerting to see these protests go from legitimate protests, First Amendment protected speech, and the right to protest, to infringing on students. And my heart goes out. A lot of our congregants have sons and daughters who never had a high school graduation. Now they're at USC and they're supposed to graduate. USC called off its graduation. So, you know, the old expression, my right to swing my fist ends at your nose. The right of these protesters, who I find so offensive in principle, but their right to protest ends at blocking access to campus, to attending live classes in Columbia, attending a graduation at USC. It's really an outrage, and I fault the administration of these universities for not getting more aggressive, which thankfully they're first starting to do right now.
And it is to be noted, one thing that we don't hear in all these conversations lately is what started the war to begin with, the Hamas terror attack on Israel back on October 7th. And you probably drive by it every day, as I do, that dramatic display in Beverly Hills of about 1,400 flags there, most of them Israeli, but also U.S. flags there and other nationalities, people who were killed on October 7th.
Yes, you know, we've had over 630 Israeli soldiers killed in battle because Hamas uses its own citizens as human shields, and the Israeli forces have to delicately go in and attempt to clean out these nests of Hamas. And, you know, Hamas murders babies, they rape and mutilate women. Sheryl Sandberg, the COO former COO of Meta, she made a film, Silence Before Screaming, and how she describes the brutality, the horrors of the brutality of the rape and mutilation of women. Hamas must be eliminated. There's no easy way around it. And when we hear students on campuses saying, we are Hamas, and wearing these keffiyehs, we realize also as we look at the tents that this must be an organized and orchestrated effort. And, you know, with your background in finance, the question is always, how do you follow the money? And when you follow the money, you see that there are certain core sources that are funding these protests on campuses that are completely overlooking and ignoring the provocation of this horrible attack and the grabbing of hostages on October 7th. And, you know, I like to say, you want a ceasefire? Release the hostages first before we can talk about a ceasefire.
Right, and now attention is focused on these talks between Israel and Hamas in Cairo, and we're following those developments. But we've seen these protests and now encampments, USC, UCLA, Columbia, Harvard, Yale, the biggest universities in the United States, where you have these setups now.
But you have to stand up to them, Frank. Many of our congregants attended the UCLA rally for the Jewish students. If you allow these pro-Hamas, anti-American, really, they're anti-American. They claim to be pro-Palestinian, but that's a fraud. They're really pro-Hamas, and they're often paid. They're non-students. They're coming from off campus. If you allow them to intimidate and don't respond to them, they'll continue to rule the day. So there have to be counter protests, and they have to be told that you have limitations to just how far you can go in terms of intimidating other students. It's unacceptable. You and I both know that if there was a protest on that campus saying we want to execute people who are gay or trans, or we want to lynch African Americans, God forbid, that those encampments would be disassembled instantaneously. And we want to see that same response to this kind of vicious anti-Semitism.
And finally, a spokesman at Columbia University finally spoke up and condemned the anti-Semitic language and calls for violence as simply aberrant. He said that academic leaders have been negotiating with protesters now, but have been unable to reach an agreement. And now, of course, police are starting to be called in to crack down on these protesters out there.
But it's outrageous, Frank, that they are unable to negotiate. Who negotiates with people who create an encampment and block student access and spout out hateful speech? And I think we want to see people working together for a common cause. That's what we try to accomplish in our prayers and in faith-based communities. And when we see this kind of hatred and administrations that are so timid and weak that they tolerate this. And as I said, they would never tolerate this if it was anti-black or anti-Asian or anti-trans. That would be immediately a stop would be placed to that. And this is the response we want to start seeing on the part of these campuses, these administrators, these presidents of universities.
Certainly, we've seen Beverly Hills speak up for Israel in a big way. Also, the United Hatzalah group received tremendous support from philanthropists here, including Rick Caruso, who was on this program following that important event recently in Century City. And you mentioned the Israeli IDF troops who've been killed, and they certainly have to be remembered. And will you be having a special ceremony for the IDF forces who've been lost so far?
Yes, our Temple Saban Theater will be the site of a citywide memorial in remembrance of over 620 Israeli soldiers who've been killed in battle, and also the hostages who've died and those who were killed on October 7th. We're holding a citywide memorial. We expect a full house of 2,000 people at our venue from all the different organizations to acknowledge and pay our respects to the soldiers who had the unenviable task of going into those tunnels that Hamas built, the terror tunnels where they're holding hostages and committing atrocities and raping the women hostages, sexually assaulting so many of them. So we'll be holding a memorial observance and standing together proudly and united on behalf of Israel's efforts to eradicate and eliminate Hamas.
We'll keep an open line to you, Rabbi. Thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon. That's prominent Los Angeles Rabbi David Barron, the founding rabbi of the Beverly Hills Temple of the Arts, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang. You're listening to 790 KBC.
You met Lala Kent on Vanderpump Rules. Now Lala and her friends share everything on Give Them Lala.
I'm expecting my second child, which is very, very amazing to say.
Congratulations.
Feels
We're
that
all
way.
with child.
You can say she's pregnant, she's knocked up, anything except with child.
Oh, I love with child. I'm going to be saying it all the time. Excuse me.
Yes.
6 feet. I'm with child.
Watch what Lala is talking about on YouTube or search for Give Them Lala wherever you listen.